السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم وإياي فارهبون وآمنوا بما أنزلت مصدقا لما معكم ولا تكونوا أول كافر به ولا تشتروا بآياتي ثمنا قليلا وإياي فاتقون ولا تلبسوا الحق بالباطل وتكتموا الحق وأنتم تعلمون وأقيموا الصلاة وآتوا الزكاة واركعوا مع الراكعين أتأمرون الناس بالبر وتنسون أنفسكم وأنتم تتلون الكتاب أفلا تعقلون واستعينوا بالصبر والصلاة وإنها لكبيرة إلا على الخاشعين الذين يظنون أنهم ملاقو ربهم وأنهم إليه راجعون صدق الله العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Last week we did about the story of Adam alayhi salam and the story of where Allah Ta'ala commanded the malaika to prostrate before Adam alayhi salam. Now we are starting off ayah number 40 of Surah Al Bakara, and now from ayah number 40 all the way to ayah number 142 of Surah Al Bakara, Allah Ta'ala is speaking about the Yahud and the Bani Israel. So almost around an entire juz, an entire para is regarding the Bani Israel, the Jews and the Yahud. So previously, from the beginning of Surah Al Bakara till this part of Surah Al Bakara, Allah Ta'ala mentioned the three different groups of people. Allah Ta'ala mentioned proofs that show His wahdaniyat and the oneness of Allah Ta'ala. Allah Ta'ala spoke about challenging the people to bring something similar to the Quran. Then Allah Ta'ala spoke about Adam alayhi salam and Iblis as well. Now, before we continue, Allah Ta'ala in these ayat from ayah number 40 to 142 speaks about the reality of the Yahud and exposes the Jews. Allah Ta'ala mentions about their evil hearts, mentions about their mockery, their arrogance, their pride, their ignorance, and their plot and their planning. And it warns the Muslims about them as well. So sometimes Allah Ta'ala addresses the Bani Israel in a kind and nice way. Sometimes Allah Ta'ala addresses them in a way to cause some fear in their hearts. Sometimes Allah Ta'ala addresses the Yahud and the Bani Israel by mentioning different blessings that Allah Ta'ala gave them and gave their forefathers as well. Before we start off the ayah where Allah Ta'ala is addressing Ya Bani Israel, at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were two types of disbelievers. Disbelievers were of two types. Number one were those disbelievers that were idol worshippers, that were mushrikun, known as the pagans of Mecca. Right? Many of the people of Mecca, they were mushrikun and they were pagans. So these people, they would just follow their forefathers. They had no ilm, they had no book, they had no knowledge. They were ignorant people. Whatever their forefathers used to do, they would just copy. And they would not leave the religion of their fathers. So this was the first group, which is known as the mushrikun. The second group of disbelievers were known as the Ahlul Kitab. And these people, they used to believe in the prophets before. For example, the Jews used to believe in Musa alayhi salam, and the Christians and Nasara, they used to believe in Isa alayhi salam. And they were knowledgeable people. They had some knowledge, they had some honor, they had some respect in the eyes of the people. So this was the second group, and they are known as Ahlul Kitab, which refers to the Jews and the Christians. And the first group were known as the Mushrikun, the polytheists, those who just follow their forefathers and worship and pray to idols. So these were the two groups of disbelievers at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we can find nowadays as well. And the reason why Allah Ta'ala and the Muslims, they try to get these people towards Islam is because the Yahud and the Christians, they were people of knowledge and they were people of respect. And a lot of people used to trust them and look up to them. So if the Muslims were able to get them towards Islam, then this would attract many people as well. And now the word Bani Israel in the Quran, they're referred to as Bani Israel, the Jews, right? The Yahud. In the Quran, Allah Ta'ala calls them Bani Israel. Now what does Bani Israel mean? The word Bani means children or servants. The word Israel is a Hebrew word, right? And this means servant of Allah Ta'ala. So Bani Israel in the Hebrew means servants of Allah Ta'ala. And the word Israel is another name of Yaqub alayhi salam, right? Yaqub alayhi, the Anbiya, they had many names, but Yaqub alayhi salam, he had two names, Yaqub and Israel. So Bani Israel means in Hebrew the servants of Allah, and it means the children of Yaqub, who is known as Israel. And if we look in the Quran, Allah Ta'ala never addresses them by saying Ya Bani Yaqub, right? But Allah Ta'ala mentions Ya Bani Israel to remind the people that you are ultimately the servants of Allah Ta'ala. Although you are the children of Yaqub, more than that and greater than that is that you are the servants of Allah Ta'ala. So to remind them and to keep it in their minds, Ya Bani Israel and not Ya Bani Yaqub, to remind them, because in the Hebrew it means servants of Allah Ta'ala, and ultimately the Jews, they are the worshippers and the servants of Allah Ta'ala, and that they should follow the teachings of their father Yaqub alayhi salam, who used to believe in Allah Ta'ala alone. So this is what the word Israel means, and it means the children of Yaqub, which also means the servants of Allah Ta'ala, and which is why you see Allah Ta'ala addresses the Yahud in the Quran by Ya Bani Israel. Now, starting off the ayah number 40, Allah Ta'ala says, يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم وأوفوا بعهدي أوفي بعهدكم. That, O servants of Allah, O children of Yaqub, اذكروا نعمتي, remember my ni'mah and my favors which I have conferred and I have bestowed upon you. And then later on Allah Ta'ala is going to go into that and go into the deep details of the ni'mah and the favors Allah Ta'ala gave them. So in the beginning, Allah Ta'ala ijmalan vaguely mentions that I have given you many ni'mas. And then later on, Allah Ta'ala explains many of the ni'mah in details. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَأَوْفُوا بِعَهْدِي أُوفِ بِعَهْدِكُمْ, that fulfill the covenant that you have pledged with me, and I will fulfill my promise and pledge as well. So now, what is the covenant that the Yahud, they made with Allah Ta'ala? This comes in another ayah where Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ أَخَذَ اللَّهُ مِيثَاقَ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل, that Allah Ta'ala took a pledge and a covenant and a promise from the Bani Israel. What was that promise? وَقَالَ اللَّهُ إِنِّي مَعَكُمْ لَإِنْ أَقَمْتُمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَيْتُمُ الزَّكَاةَ وَآمَنْتُمْ بِرُسُلِي, that you have to pray your salah, you have to give your zakah, and that you have to believe in my messengers. So from amongst those three, the most important was to believe in the messenger, which was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know the Jews were famously known for not believing in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Allah Ta'ala is telling the Bani Israel that remember all the ni'mah that I have given you and I have bestowed upon your forefathers, and complete and fulfill the covenant and the pact, which I mentioned was to pray the salah, to give the zakah, and to believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ufi bi'ahdikum. Then Allah Ta'ala says that I will fulfill my covenant. And what is the covenant of Allah Ta'ala? How does Allah Ta'ala fulfill His promise? Right? بِمَا عَهَدْتُمْ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ حُسْنِ الثَّوَابِ. That when you pray your salah, you give your zakah, you believe in Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, my promise to you is that I will reward you, and I will forgive you, and I will grant you the Jannah. So this is what it means when Allah Ta'ala says, if you fulfill your covenant, I will fulfill my covenant. Someone may get the wrong idea. What does it mean? Did Allah Ta'ala take a promise? So this is why it's important we learn the tafsir of these ayat. Ufi bi'ahdikum means that Allah Ta'ala will reward them. Obviously Allah Ta'ala is not in need of promising anyone,
But when the Yahud and the Bani Israel, Allah Ta'ala is telling them, if you fulfill your covenant and what you agreed for, then also I will forgive you and I will reward you and I will grant you the Jannah ultimately. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَإِيَّايَ فَارْهَبُونَ, and fear me alone. So this was ayah number 40, which Allah Ta'ala mentions. Then moving on, ayah number 41, Allah Ta'ala says, وَآمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلْتُ مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَكُمْ, that believe and bring iman in what I have sent to you, referring to the Quran. So a part of the covenant and the promise of the Yahud and the Bani Israel is that they must pray their salah, they must give their zakah, they must believe in the messengers of Allah Ta'ala, and they must believe in the Quran as well. وَآمِنُوا بِمَا أَنزَلْتُ, believe and bring iman and bring firm belief in what I have sent and what I have descended and revealed, yani the Quran. مُصَدِّقًا لِمَا مَعَكُمْ, this Quran is confirming that which has already been with you. Yani we know the Yahud, the Bani Israel, they were given the Torah. And the Quran is confirming what the Torah says. It is not different. So Allah Ta'ala is reminding them and telling them that this Quran which I have sent is not going against the book that was already sent to you. It is confirming and expanding on it. So you must believe in the Quran as well. And then Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَا تَكُونُوا أَوَّلَ كَافِرٍ بِي, do not be the first to disbelieve in Allah Ta'ala, in the Quran, and in Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And now the question comes about, what is the difference if you are the first to disbelieve, if you are the second, if you are the last to disbelieve? Disbelieving is disbelieving. Doesn't matter if you are the first to disbelieve, doesn't matter if you are the last one to disbelieve. So why is Allah Ta'ala highlighting the fact to the Bani Israel that do not be the first to disbelieve in the Quran? And when you disbelieve in the Quran, ultimately you are disbelieving in the Risala of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So in other words, Allah Ta'ala is telling the Yahud and the Bani Israel, do not disbelieve in the Quran, yani do not disbelieve in the oneness of Allah Ta'ala, do not disbelieve in the Risala and the prophethood of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So we are mentioning, why is Allah Ta'ala mentioning do not be the first? When being the first or being the last or being the middle one to disbelieve is all the same. You are still known as a disbeliever and you will be thrown into Jahannam. The reason for this is when you are the first to disbelieve, then everyone else after you who disbelieve, using you as an example, you will get that sin as well. So this is also an advice to us and a ruling and a commandment to us that when you do something wrong, and you are an example for other people doing wrong, the sin will not only go on them but will follow to you as well, right? So when you are an example for someone doing haram or sin and they look at you, then you will also get the sin as well. And also the opposite, if you do good and people look towards you, as Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, that the one who indicates and commands people towards good and shows people good and they follow him, then he will get the reward as well. So this is why Allah Ta'ala is saying that do not be the first to disbelieve. Whether you are the first or last, you will still be punished. But you will get even more and double punishment if because of you other people disbelieve as well. That's number one, why Allah Ta'ala mentioned this. Number two, why Allah Ta'ala is saying do not be the first to disbelieve. Yani do not be the first from amongst Ahlul Kitab to disbelieve. Right? The mushrikun, they are ignorant. They have no ilm. They do not know. They are just following blindly their forefathers. Allah Ta'ala is saying that you should not be the first to disbelieve. Rather, you should be the first to believe. Because you have been given the Torah. You have been given some knowledge. And in the Torah, Allah Ta'ala says, مَكْتُوبًا عِنْدَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ, that the qualities of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the commandment to follow and to believe in Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has already come in the Torah. So you already have knowledge of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You already have knowledge of the coming of a messenger. So instead of being the first to disbelieve, it only makes sense that you are the first to believe because you have been given the knowledge. It was already mentioned in your books that Rasulullah will come, to believe in Rasulullah. His qualities have been described in the Torah. So for you to be the first to disbelieve, this is completely the opposite of what should happen. What should happen is you should be the first to believe because you already have some knowledge that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is coming and he will be the final messenger. So you should be the first and you should be rushing and hastening towards believing in the Quran and believing in Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَا تَشْتَرُوا بِآيَاتِي ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا. Do not sell my verses for a cheap price. Now what does this mean? The ulama and the scholars known as the Ahbarul Yahud, the big scholars of the Yahud, they knew that Islam was the truth because they have knowledge of the Torah. And the Torah mentions about Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they knew the truth. But out of fear of losing their followers, and out of fear of losing some wealth and some power and authority and position and strength, they would forge and they would fabricate and they would cover and they would hide and conceal the Torah and the truth. So Allah Ta'ala is mentioning to them, because if they were to say that now the Quran, it is the truth, and the Torah has been outdated because whatever is the Quran, outdates all the previous Sharia, and the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the true and the only person to be followed, now they are going to lose their followers, and they're going to lose their wealth, and they're going to lose their power and their authority. So because, even though we have the question that they knew the truth, so why are they not going towards the truth? Because they are going to lose the dunya, they're going to lose wealth, they're going to lose power, they're going to lose authority. So this is why Allah Ta'ala is saying that do not give up the akhirah for the temporary dunya. This is why Allah Ta'ala is giving the comparison of do not sell my verses for a cheap and a paltry price, because the hereafter is the true life and this dunya will complete. So give up some wealth, give up some power, give up the temporary dunya, Allah Ta'ala will reward you in the hereafter. So you are giving up something great and permanent for something which is insignificant and temporary. So Allah Ta'ala is reminding the ahbar and the Jews who know the truth, that convey the truth to your people. Do not worry about losing the followers. Allah Ta'ala will take care of you in Jannah. And something else we can take out from this ayah is that we should not give certain rulings and certain fatwas to please the people. Because maybe, if I say something nice, and if I say, this is jaiz, he will give me some hadiyah, or he will, give me something. So this is also a ruling, not only to the ulama of the Yahud, but to the ulama nowadays, that just because you may give a certain leniency and certain ruling, do not do that for a certain price which the guy may give you. Maybe he has some power, if you give the ruling in his favor, he will give you something, or he has some money, he will give you some money. Always stick to the haqq, no matter what it may be, and do not give up your akhirah for the insignificant price of this dunya. So this is also what we have been taught from this ayah as well, right? Some of the ayat, they are revealed to a certain nation or to a certain person, but that doesn't mean we cannot take lesson from that. So these ayat were obviously revealed to the Jews, but al-ibratu li'umum al-lafz la li khusus al-sabab. This is a rule in Sharia, that when some ibrah, some lesson was given to specific people, this is also to be used for everyone as well. So even though these ayat are referring to the Jews and the Yahud, everyone can take the lesson, which is what this means. Al-ibrah, lesson, is not based on the specific scenario that is going on or situation. لِعُمُومِ اللَّفْظِ, it is in general for everyone to use. So this is something very important, which unfortunately nowadays is happening a lot of times. We give a certain ruling or a certain advice or some fatwa to please the people, like what the ulama and the ahbar of the Jews were doing, so that they can get some wealth and some power and they don't lose the people. Because sometimes when you give a harsh ruling to someone, which is what the Sharia is saying, now they will get mad and sad and they will leave you, and you will not have their companionship and you will not have their wealth as well. Always stick to the haqq. قُلِ الْحَقَّ وَلَوْ كَانَ مُرًّا. Speak the truth even if it may be bitter. Right? Some people might not like the truth, but it is very important you always speak the truth, even if it may be bitter and hard for some people to swallow. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَإِيَّايَ فَاتَّقُونَ, and fear me alone. Now the next ayah Allah Ta'ala is saying in ayah number 42, again referring to the Jews and the ahbar of the Yahud, وَلَا تَلْبِسُوا الْحَقَّ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Allah Ta'ala is saying, do not mix the truth with falsehood. وَتَكْتُمُوا الْحَقَّ وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. And do not hide the truth while you know what is the truth. In other words, Allah Ta'ala is telling the Jews and their scholars, do not mix the truth with falsehood. Yani, do not mix the truth which has been sent by Allah Ta'ala and mix it with your falsehood which you fabricate. Right? What the Jews they used to do, they used to fabricate and they used to forge and they used to hide certain ayat. Because if the ignorant of the Jews, they read the ayat and they will be like, what are you saying? This is the truth. So the ulama and the scholars of the Yahud, they used to fabricate and they used to forge and they used to hide certain ayat. So in the Torah mentions the ayat of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the ulama of the Yahud, taktumun, they used to hide it and they used to cover it. And certain ayat which the people would not like, they would forge and they would fabricate and they would mix it with their own two senses. So whatever came from Allah Ta'ala, if it wasn't pleasing to them and if they did not like it, they would mix it with something they would do on their own with their own hands. So Allah Ta'ala is saying, do not mix the truth that Allah Ta'ala sent with your own forgery and with your own fabrication and with your own hands. وَتَكْتُمُ الْحَقِّ أي لا تخفوا ما في كتابكم من أوصاف محمد. Do not hide and conceal the qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam which have come in your book, which have come in the Torah. وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. While you know that this is the truth. So وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ can refer to two things. Number one, do not hide the qualities of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam which come in the Torah while you know that he is the true messenger, number one. Number two, while you know the harms and the sin of hiding and concealing and fabrication. So two harms that you know. Number one, you know that Islam and Rasulullah is the true messenger. You know that as well. Number two, you know when you hide and you do kitman of the truth and you conceal the truth, you will be punished for this as well. So you know these two things and still you are doing this. So Allah Ta'ala is saying to stay away from this. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Then Allah Ta'ala is saying that establish the salah and give the zakah and pray with those who are praying. Again, this is from the covenant which we mentioned earlier, where Allah Ta'ala says, لَإِنْ أَقَمْتُمُ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَيْتُمُ الزَّكَاةَ, that pray the salah and give the zakah. The word zakah in the Arabic language has two meanings. Number one, purity. Zakah, zakka yuzaki means to purify. And number two, it means to grow and to increase. And the reason why when we give our zakah, it is known as zakah is because number one, it purifies our wealth. And number two, it will be a cause and a means to increase our wealth as well. So just a side note that the word zakah literally means to purify and to grow. So when we give zakah, we are purifying our wealth. And this will be a means and a cause for our wealth to grow and increase as well. Then Allah Ta'ala says, وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. And we all know the word وَارْكَعُوا means ruku, to do ruku, to bow down. But the ulama, they say that this means the salah. So why is Allah Ta'ala saying وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ? In Urdu you can say Juz bolkar kul murad lena, meaning to say a part, but you actually intend the whole. In other words, Allah Ta'ala is mentioning a part of the salah, but He is intending the entire salah. So when Allah Ta'ala says وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ, to do ruku with those who do ruku, it means to pray salah. He is mentioning an important part of the salah, and by mentioning some of a part and a act of the salah, it actually means the entire salah itself. So Allah Ta'ala says pray salah with those who pray salah. How can you pray with those who pray? In other words, jama'ah, in congregation. And there's a lengthy topic as to what is the ruling of jama'ah, but from this ayah we see the importance and the virtue of praying salah in jama'ah. And we know the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that the one who prays salah in jama'ah, he will get reward up to 25 or 27 times more good deeds. And there's a lengthy discussion, but in other words, what we come to know, it is very important to pray your salah in jama'ah. and it is very rewarding as well. Now Allah Ta'ala goes on to the next ayah, ayah number 44.